Today, we're diving into a really powerful idea about learning from a psychologist whose work, believe it or not, was almost completely erased from history. His theory totally changed the game for how we understand the human mind.
So, think about this for a second. Have you ever noticed how you just learn something way faster when you have a little bit of help? You know, like when you were learning to ride a bike or trying to figure out a tough math problem. That one little tip from someone who knows what they're doing, it can feel like a total superpower, right?
Well, what if I told you that one psychologist argued this isn't just some helpful little trick? He said it's the absolute foundation of learning. It's the fundamental way our minds are built, literally from the ground up.
So who was this guy? Who was the mind behind this powerful idea? Well, let's meet Lev Vygotsky, a man whose life story is honestly just as incredible as his theories. Vygotsky was a true prodigy, basically cramming an entire lifetime of work into just a few short years. And get this, he jumped into psychology without any formal training. He wrote his masterpiece, Thought and Language, and then, tragically, died from tuberculosis when he was only 37. After he died, his ideas were actually banned by the government for decades. It wasn't until the 1960s that his work was rediscovered and finally started to change education all over the world. It's just wild to think we almost lost it all.
So what was this revolutionary idea that was nearly lost to history? Well, at its core, it's a simple but profound insight. Learning is not a solo act. It's a social one. Vygotsky called this the sociocultural theory. The big idea here is that our minds are literally shaped by our interactions with other people. We learn from our parents, our teachers, and from the tools our culture gives us, especially language. So development doesn't just happen inside a social context, it's driven by it.
Now, to really get why this was such a big deal, you have to compare it to the other giant of psychology at the time, Piaget. See, Piaget saw a child as an individual scientist, kind of exploring the world and figuring things out all on their own. But Vygotsky saw a child as a social apprentice, learning their craft from mentors. For him, our inner world is built from the outside in.
Okay, so if we're all social apprentices, what's our most important tool? What's the thing that makes all this learning possible? Vygotsky had a very clear answer. It's language. He didn't just see language as a way to communicate. No, he argued it's the very blueprint of thought itself. He believed that without language, we'd be stuck with just basic perception, like other animals. I mean, think about that. Language is what builds the human mind. Vygotsky actually laid out 3 stages for how this all works. First, there's social speech, toddlers using words to get what they want. Then it turns into egocentric speech. This is when a kid talks to themselves out loud to figure things out. You've probably seen this, a child narrating what they're doing. Finally, that talking out loud goes quiet and becomes inner speech. That's your internal monologue, the voice inside your head right now. So the big takeaway? The social world literally becomes your inner world. Okay, this all leads us to Vygotsky's most famous and probably most practical concept. If we learn best from other people, where exactly is the magic happening? What's the sweet spot for growth? Vygotsky called it the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. It's not about what you can already do on your own, and it's not about what's completely impossible for you. The ZPD is that perfect learning zone, that space where a task is just a little bit out of your reach, but totally doable with the right kind of help. The easiest way to think about it is like this. There are things you can do all by yourself. Then there are things you just can't do yet, no matter what. The ZPD is that fertile ground right in the middle, the what I can do with help zone. It's where a teacher or a mentor can make the biggest impact, because that's where you're primed and ready to grow. So how do we teach inside this zone? Well, the technique is called scaffolding, and the name is perfect. Just like scaffolding on a building gives support while it's being constructed, a teacher provides a lot of support at first. Then, as the student gets better and more confident, that support is slowly taken away until they can stand on their own. It is the ZPD in action. Of course, like any huge theory, Vygotsky's ideas aren't without their critics. And his work, especially his most famous concept, has definitely faced a lot of scrutiny over the years. And this quote really hits the nail on the head. The zone of proximal development is such a powerful idea, but critics argue that it's become so popular that it's often misunderstood or just thrown around as an empty buzzword. So let's look at the main criticisms. First, his theories came from rich observations, not really from the kind of controlled experiments we see today. His heavy focus on social learning also means he kind of glosses over the role of genetics and biology.
Plus, critics wonder if his ideas really are universal. I mean, is heavy verbal instruction really the main way people learn in every single culture? And finally, because he died so young, a lot of his brilliant ideas, especially about language, just feel unfinished.
But, and this is a big but, even with those critiques, Vygotsky's legacy is just undeniable. He was a huge force in shifting education away from a model where the teacher just lectures to one that's way more student-centered and collaborative. He completely changed how we talk about teaching and learning.
So we want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. If Vygotsky is right, if our minds are really built through social interaction, who have been the architects of your thoughts?